Have you ever held back from speaking up at work because you don't want to be the person saying something negative? Let me share with you a micro-learning moment from a 5-minute shitty moment that I had recently. Now, it was a particularly packed day. We had quite a lot of internal meetings that morning, and I'd just had a last-minute booking with a fast turnaround that I needed to process. So I rushed out of one meeting, dived into my emails to process that booking and send off that email, and then I rushed into the next meeting about 5 minutes late. I'm in the waiting room, ready to make my apologies, feeling really quite flustered. And then the time carried on ticking. Nobody was letting me in the waiting room. Now, at first I'm thinking, yeah, they probably just haven't noticed yet. They'll let me in soon. And then I thought, well, maybe they're doing an icebreaker and it's not a good time to let me in. So yeah, they'll let me in when they're ready. And then as the minutes carried on ticking, my mind started getting creative. Hang on a minute. What if they're being ruthless about latecomers and actually I've been locked out of that meeting? Or what if they've had enough of me? I spoke too much at the last one, I was too direct, too abrupt, and they don't want me in that meeting anymore. Now, in the clear light of day, those two are clearly figments of my imagination. And my colleagues are wonderful, we have a good relationship, and one of our values is trust and kindness are our rocket fuel. And so I would trust that if either of those things were true, somebody would say something to me first, rather than just lock me out of a meeting. But my mind did go there, because when we're in a state of stress, it's really easy to slip into high functioning fear, where fear starts writing the script. My fear, in this case, my fear of rejection or my fear of being left out, that's what was writing those particular scripts. Now, even in the moment, my logical brain was going, yeah, that's ridiculous, Grace. Those stories are silly. And in the end, it only took 5 minutes to get into the meeting. But afterwards, I still felt kind of sad and frustrated. I still felt slightly forgotten about or left out. And I'm sharing this because this can happen even in a really strong team. So my colleagues and I have a really strong relationship, and yet this can still happen on those days when we're feeling maybe under pressure or overwhelmed or just having an off day. But what's important is what happens next. Now, I could have just shaken it off, told myself not to be so silly, and after a sleep, I probably wouldn't even think about it again. And that's a totally sensible option. But I did have a lingering thought. If I'm feeling like this, what if it happens to somebody else? Maybe not to me, but to a delegate who is feeling overwhelmed or under pressure and rushing to join a session that's designed to ease their overwhelm. How would they feel if they got stuck in a waiting room for 5 minutes? And so I decided to speak up, and I shared that feeling that I had with my team. And between us, we started to explore. And it turns out that in both Teams and in Zoom, there is a function where we can turn off the waiting room once you're in session. So yeah, have a waiting room for keeping everyone there until you're ready to start the session. But once the session started, you can turn off the waiting room function and people can slip straight in. And that means that if you're running late or if your connection drops and you need to come back in, you don't need to wait to be let back in. You can come straight in. But it also means if you're the one hosting the session, you don't need to keep an eye on that waiting room. You can be fully present for the session that you're delivering, the meeting that you're chairing, or the presentation that you're giving. Well, now I'm glad that I spoke up. And I wonder, how many other micro-learning moments do we miss out on when we hold back from talking about some of our shittier feelings?